Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. Of course, in today's stream we will be talking about Veronica Leoni and her debut at Calvin Klein. So this should be a fun one. This should be very interesting. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, Veronica Leoni is currently the creative director of Calvin Klein Collections. She was actually announced as the creative director last year. And she actually became the first female creative director of Calvin Klein Collections. Now, Veronica Leoni has a very strong background. She has an extremely strong resume. She has worked for the likes of Jill Sander. She worked at Phoebe Philo Celine. She's also worked at Montclair and The Row, where I believe she was women's wear, menswear director, design director, which is really good. She also has her own namesake label, which I never really know how to pronounce, but this is the label here, Queera, I think, Kira or Queera. But she's also had a lot of success with the brand. The brand actually became an LVMH Prize finalist 2 years ago in 2023. So very strong resume, really good at what she does. When it comes to her brand, she described her brand as a sharp point of view with femininity, but with an edge, which I found really interesting. And I think one of the reasons why Calvin Klein hired her is you look at her background and it's very much in line with kind of what Calvin Klein wants. Because if we think of past eras of Calvin Klein, right, we can first think of the likes of Raf Simons. This was a really, really famous time for Calvin Klein. It had all the critical acclaim, but it didn't really do well commercially. Now, I have my own reasons why I think it didn't work commercially. I think part of the reason was, first of all, it was way too expensive. The prices did not make any sense, and that's why everyone wanted them, but no one could afford it. And the second it went into sale, especially when Raf Simons eventually left, I remember everyone was buying that stuff on sale. Like, everyone really wanted that stuff. So the pricing was really odd. But we saw Raf Simons really playing with different things, whether it was the collaborations he was doing with the, Andy Warhol Foundation, looking at things like fireman jackets, kind of having this European take and understanding of what American culture represents, referencing different cartoons. He had pieces that were referencing some big colleges in the US, like Yale. He was referencing films like Jaws. So it was very interesting, but it also was extremely different to the Calvin Klein that I guess most of us were used to seeing prior to Raf Simons' tenure. Because designers before, whether we're talking about Francesco Costa, Narciso Rodriguez, or even Calvin Klein himself, they had a more minimal, sleek, slender, tailoring, sort of sexy chic vibe. Whereas Raf Simons just threw on his typical boxy silhouettes, broad shoulders, big coats. And so while the prices definitely was one big reason why I feel like it didn't work, but it could also be that, the Calvin Klein audience just wasn't really the Raf Simons audience because aesthetically it's so completely different. It's so far away from that sort of stuff. And it's interesting because when I was speculating what exactly they wanted Veronica Leoni to do, the first person I thought of was Carolyn Bassett Kennedy, because she's really the person that we think about when we think of minimalism in the 90s and we throw, Calvin Klein into the mix, right? When we think of the 90s brands like Jill Sander or Helmut Lang or Calvin Klein, she had that sort of Calvin Klein chic. I mean, she worked at Calvin Klein and she's always on mood boards. Even now, there are so many designers that will be like, oh yeah, I was really inspired by some of her looks. Because she had this very chic look. She would regularly wear like Calvin Klein denim with very sleek shoes. So this is what we associate with the old Calvin Klein. It's a certain level of like sexiness and, mystique in a way. Luke says, I think about Kate Moss. I mean, I think about Kate Moss too. But why I was thinking about this more so is because Veronica Leoni worked at Jill Sander and The Row and Phoebe Philo Celine in the modern day. Phoebe Philo Celine is sexiness, but not in the way that it was done in the 90s. Phoebe Philo Celine was more intellectual sexy. The same thing with The Row. The Row is not really sexy like Calvin Klein was in the 90s. The Row is more subdued, sexiness. So I feel like Carolyn represents that a bit more than Kate Moss to me personally, with the way she dresses and how she presents herself in a way. So that's why I think about her more. But yeah, this is kind of what we come to associate with Calvin Klein of the time. And so that's why it was very interesting to see what exact direction does Veronica Leoni go? Does she just go completely with a lot of brands she's worked at? Does she look at the archives? What exactly is she going to do with the aesthetic? And I was really looking forward to seeing. But yeah, now to go straight into the runway show. Let me just put this on the screen. It's very interesting. You can already see there on the carpet, it has, Calvin Klein collection. And this was actually held at Calvin Klein's longtime headquarters, 205 West 39th Street in New York City's garment district, sorry. It's funny because when Raf Simons took over Calvin Klein, it was like CK205W39, which obviously is a reference to that. But I like that they've just taken it back to Calvin Klein collections and they're not confusing us with, letters and numbers, right? But basically, Veronica Leoni's job is she has the role of solidifying Calvin Klein back to the top of fashion as one of the leading brands in fashion. And so these runway shows are supposed to have sort of a trickle-down effect on everything else, whether that's on the underwear, or the fragrances, or the wider marketing strategy. And so that's why her role is very important and why it's very important to talk about. However, when I first looked at this collection, I didn't really see anything too interesting. In the show notes, Veronica Leoni referred to the fact that she was working with 3 different silhouettes, right? So one silhouette was the archival, skinny, more slim silhouette. So you can literally see it in this piece, for example. That's more akin to old Calvin Klein. That's literally looks like a direct reference from old Calvin Klein. But then the second silhouette was more of like a flowy silhouette. And then the third silhouette was more like playing with proportions and playing with different ways that you can cover the body. Like this, for example, that's like more of the wider silhouette. So first of all, I thought it was a bit all over the place because it's a bit weird to have an old Calvin Klein silhouette, which I do like that silhouette that we just saw there with the grey, and then mixing it with these really massive, really wide, really flowy garments. It was just a bit weird, mixing all of those things together. I thought that was a really, really odd, strangely odd, actually. So that was something that really confused me. I can also see a lot of brands that she's worked at really influencing what she's doing, whether that's Phoebe Philo, Celine, or The Row. You can kind of see it there. This thing that she did here, this sort of models holding the coat together, that's something that we've seen from many different designers. We've even seen it from Matteo Blasi at Bottega Veneta not too long ago. And her reason for doing that is she was talking about sexiness, because sexiness, of course, is a phrase that we use a lot when we talk about Calvin Klein, especially from the 90s. And to quote her directly, she said, "When it comes to sexiness, it's more like an attitude. You own it in the way you wear the clothes. I think it's really intimate being sexy, regardless of the silhouette, the amount of skin. It's about confidence." And so in lieu of her trying to show this sort of different kind of sexiness and also like a different version of sexiness, how we see it, because she was saying in interviews that sexiness is something that was always in her mind when she was thinking about designing this collection. That's why she had, people shutting their coats with their hands, right? It's like kind of this idea of, clutching away your sexiness, because sexiness is associated with showing skin or maybe things that are a bit too crass. And it's kind of like this going back of, people taking control and closing their jacket. Did I think that that was a successful way of doing that? Not really. Did I think that made a lot of sense? Not really, to be honest. Because it's like, she was saying in the show notes and stuff that she wants to express like a more intimate kind of desire. And kind of how she plans on doing that is, in her sense, flipping the Calvin Klein woman from the object of desire to the one doing the desiring, is how they phrase it, right? I just don't think she did that. I just don't really think she did that. I understand the concept of I read an interview where she was mentioning the fact that in the modern day, kind of what sexiness means and what we view sexiness as should be different and is different, because now we're no longer in a, position where we view women the way we do, which is good from a society standpoint. And now she's saying basically women have their own control to basically control their image. But there's nothing that when I look at these clothes, I don't get that intellectual sense from the clothing, even though that's kind of what she was saying. Like this sort of taking back the power. Here again, we can see the references to the old Calvin Klein silhouette, and then here's more like the wider stuff. This is more akin to like what you would see from Jill Sander these days. That's kind of what you would see. And it's interesting because Calvin Klein, of course, is always about the fabrics. It's always about the silhouettes. But then, is there anything really interesting? And that's what confused me when I first looked at this collection. It was like, why are there so many different silhouettes? Right, see, once again, we have that. That's even more confusing because look at this look, right? So on the top, you have old Calvin Klein, and on the bottom, you have modern Jill Sander. So it's really like slim, sleek, chic on the top, and then not the case at the bottom. I feel like the styling could have made it sexier. Oh yeah, of course. Of course, of course, of course. This piece I kind of liked it with the sequins applied all over. I just don't like the silhouette though. Not the biggest fan of the silhouette, but the idea, I'm a fan. Here again, we have the models clutching their jackets together. I didn't think it met the desired function or what they were going for. I don't really think they achieved that with those. Let's see. They also have you can see the square toe footwear, which was a reference to Calvin Klein collections in the 90s, which is interesting. I mean, Raf Simons basically referenced something similar when he was designing at Calvin Klein, which is why when he made his boots, they had sort of the similar pointy shape with the box at the end. So I like the footwear. I'm a really, really big fan of the footwear, to be honest. Like the square-toed pump slippers from Calvin Klein 1999. I like that. Do I think it will sell? Um, I don't know. I think so. How I always think about fashion brands, right, is what new are you bringing to the table? And when I look at this collection, and I have this question, that's the first question I ask myself when I look at new runway shows. And when I look at this collection, it's too. The old Calvin Klein silhouettes, I'm here for it. The ultra wide stuff just to me looks like Jill Sander. And if you're a Jill Sander customer, nothing's going to make you go back to Calvin Klein. You need to remember that every brand has its own customer base. Calvin Klein is coming back. Like Calvin Klein collections are coming back after a big hiatus. So are any of those customers going to be like, let me check out Calvin Klein this season instead? The only way they would do that is if Calvin Klein is slightly cheaper than all those other brands like Jill Sander and definitely is going to be cheaper than the Row, unless they don't know what they're doing pricing wise. But if it's around the same price, because Calvin Klein collections are normally super expensive, we saw at the time during Raf Simons how expensive it was. So if they do that, I just don't see how it could sell. Because why would you buy this over the other stuff? You, as a brand, you always have to differentiate yourself. You have to be a bit different. Like even this dress, for example, is not a unique technique, but it's something that we now associate with a liar. This is exactly what we associate with a liar. So you just have to offer something different. You really, really have to offer something unique. You know what I mean? It's not, that's really what I'm struggling with when it comes to will this sell. It's just like, as a customer, why would you leave those brands to buy this unless it's cheaper? That's the only reason why. Kai says, yeah, the pricing matters, but CK is much more of a household name. They would have to not completely price out the common consumer. Yeah. They need to make it not completely affordable because it still is Calvin Klein collections, but more affordable than a lot of other brands that have cemented themselves over the past, I don't know, 6 years when Calvin Klein have had their hiatus. 6-7 years. Not a strong point of view, especially for such minimalistic aesthetic. Something Veronica Leoni did say in interviews, though, is that kind of minimalism changes with time. So what is minimalism in the 90s is not necessarily going to be the same aesthetic now. And, that sort of changes our idea of like certain aesthetics changes over time. I agree with her in that sense. I definitely agree. I just think that I found this collection ultra confusing because it's just like, what is your aesthetic? It's like a third is really wide silhouettes. The other is like, Calvin Klein's old silhouettes. It's just a bit all over the gaff. The underwear sucks nowadays and it's gotten more expensive. I wonder if Veronica Leoni is going to do some interesting stuff with the underwear. Because, the underwear used to had everyone in a chokehold. That became what Calvin Klein was known for. But the quality is really bad. People don't really wear it anymore. People don't talk about Calvin Klein underwear and jeans the way that they used to when I was like 10, 11 years old. Oh, we've got a cameo from Calvin Klein and Anna Wintour there. But people don't really talk about it the same way. Not the same way they used to. To see people clapping. Something that also really interested me. Let me just restart this runway show so we can watch it again. Something that really interested me about this show again was Veronica Leoni talked about the fact that she was creating a clean slate with Calvin Klein. So her idea was to kind of almost remove everything that's happened but after Calvin Klein. So whether we're talking about, Narcisco Rodriguez or Francesco Costa or Raf Simons even, she wanted to remove that and go all the way back to the time of Calvin Klein himself, which once again confused me because it's like you want to do a return to Calvin Klein, which is in the past, which has like a certain idea of what sexiness is. In the same vein, you've talked about how femininity and sexiness should be different because now instead of the woman being the object, it's kind of it's flipped on its head, which I agree with that from a conceptual standpoint. I just don't think it reflected in the clothes and kind of changing the context of the woman in that sense from the 90s into the context of 2025, where instead of being the object, they are now the one doing the desiring rather than being the desired, right? Those are two conflicting, the ethos, those are conflicting. Those don't match together. Those two things can't exist at once. And then at the same time, you've talked about old Calvin Klein and how you referenced old Calvin Klein, and we can clearly see that on the runway, but then you're kind of referencing stuff that you would have done maybe at Jill Sander and stuff with the wider silhouettes at the same time. So quite literally, the collection in and of itself is going in opposite directions. Like the clothing in the collection, they're going in opposite directions. It's really strange. It's really, really strange. Here we have the clutching once again that I was talking about. And I mean the color palette. I saw people online talking about the color palette being a bit boring. I mean, that is a very Calvin Klein thing. Calvin Klein is very much a subdued brand. I mean, what's that famous Calvin Klein quote? I love color, but I want it in flowers, right? That's a really famous Calvin Klein quote on why he doesn't use a lot of color in his clothing. I love color, but I want it in my flowers. So there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's just a reference to the house codes of Calvin Klein, to be honest, to have a very subdued, neutral tone runway collection. That's very normal for the brand. It'll be interesting how they bring in common consumers because it's not sexy/edgy like it's known in households. Yeah. And I mean, what was the quote that she had? She said like, my goal is to define an ultimate and definitive expression of monumental minimalism and pureness through shape and craft, bringing Mr. Klein's original vision and distinctive approach into the current day. And in the show notes, that was also a theme that they talked about a lot. This phrase, monumental minimalism. And when I was reading the show notes, wondering to myself, what does that mean? Because something that is monumental is something that is large in scale, something that, like, if you're saying monumental minimalism, are you saying that you want to create kind of a new understanding of minimalism that kind of takes over the fashion industry? Is that what you're saying? What exactly do they mean by that? I didn't really get any, and I didn't really see anything so different that I'm like, okay, this is the monumental minimalism they're talking about. Also, this client seems older than the old CK client. This seems more targeted to 40s, 50s professional. So it's interesting because is it? Is it targeted to the 14, 50-year-old professional? Because I mean, maybe in the 90s, people used to wear those kind of really slim silhouettes, but women that I know now that, work in law, like CEOs, like really powerful, like women, they don't wear tailoring where the silhouette is that slim. So, I mean, that old CK stuff is sexy in the sense of like, I like the silhouette, but it's not, it almost seems slightly outdated in the current day, which is why I wanted to know how exactly she was going to modernize Calvin Klein, because you talked about this in the interviews, and I just don't see it. What I see is either direct references to Calvin or a silhouette that to me is a bit too wide. If you're trying to like, there needs to be a middle ground somewhere. There definitely needs to be a middle ground somewhere. Maybe because it looks more tame, you might think it's targeted to older generations, but that's not representative of all people from that generation. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, like I said, I don't really think it's necessarily targeted to older or younger women. I just think that I found the collection quite confusing. Really, really confusing. I actually think younger people are tamer now. Are they? Are they? Because like she could have cooked when she said, sexiness is all about an attitude and the way that you think about it and the way that you carry yourself and those kind of ideas. I think she really could have pushed that idea forward, but I just don't think she did that. Like even like the collar is just like if you go back and you look at what Francesca Costa is doing with like the sneak funnel neck collars and stuff, I don't like what am I looking at? Don't really like the silhouette of that skirt, I'm not gonna lie. That grey skirt, let me run it back slightly. I do not like the silhouette of that skirt at all. That doesn't move nicely at all. Luke says, have a look at. Don't worry, I've seen all of the Calvin collections from the 90s. Um, I've seen them. Once again, trying to add some asymmetry to the shirts. Do you know what my issue is? Actually, I've been thinking about this. You know what my issue is with designers that do minimalism these days? My problem is that they all look the same. When minimalism was a thing in the 90s, every brand looked distinctively different. Jill Sander looked nothing like Calvin Klein, and Calvin Klein looked nothing like Helmut Lang. But they were all still roped and bunched into the minimalism thing. But I genuinely think nowadays, when brands do like the minimal thing, they all kind of look the same. Like they all like that Jill Sander-esque wide silhouette, Bottega Veneta silhouette. It's all the same. It's really, really all the same. I don't think Jill Sander mostly still looks like Jill Sander. I think modern Jill Sander has a wider silhouette than OG Jill Sander, to be fair. OG Jill Sander was a lot more slim in silhouette. Here we have some of the clutches. Once again, that was the dress that I said really reminds me of modern day Alaya. And also, another point I have to make, right? So, Veronica Leoni, when talking about this collection, talked about this idea of a 24/7 wardrobe, right? She wanted to make like sort of very desirable clothing, clothing that can be worn day to night, clothing that's versatile to wear. That's why she had different pants, denim, trench coats. Now, if we look at a dress like this, do we think that this fits into a concept of a 24/7 wardrobe? Let me run it back, guys. Just look at that dress quickly. Does that fit into an idea of a 24/7 wardrobe? Genuinely, just look at this dress. Let me just pause it once again. Like, does this dress look like something that can fit into a 24/7 wardrobe? I'm just wondering. Her material looks comfy. It does look comfy, to be fair. The wide silhouette, so it'll probably be comfortable to wear. And then once again, now we have the slim silhouette again. I mean, I do like that piece. That coat where the lapel goes all the way across the body. That's a cool like thing. I like that. Those were some of my favorite looks with the coats that had that detail, to be honest. Kaya says, I like the suits with no buttons. Yeah. Let me just have another look at this collection. But yeah, I mean, you guys are kind of getting the point, to be fair. I don't have anything against Veronica Leoni. I'm a big fan of her work. Like when I've done research into a lot of stuff she's done, I do like a lot of stuff she's done. I just think that I'm not really seeing much of a vision, regardless of what she's saying. I mean, my job as a journalist is to analyze the clothing and how that fits in the realm of what she actually says. And I don't think that what she's been saying in interviews and kind of what she's trying to depict through the clothing actually tallies with what she's been saying. So it's a debut collection. I mean, she's still finding her vision at Calvin Klein. I'm not too mad at it, to be honest. I think I'm looking forward to seeing what else she does in the future. But I just think that this collection was a bit confused. It didn't really have much of a vision, and I didn't think it had a very specific point of view. It's kind of all over the place. It's kind of like trying to reference like, different periods all at once, and like trying to modernize tailoring, but also referencing old Calvin Klein again. It's like all over the place, all over the place, all over the place. Like this is the silhouette. This is the kind of stuff that, you know, Calvin Klein was doing in the 90s, like the very slim silhouette. You can see how slim the trousers are here. This is what people associate more so with kind of like the sexy vision of Calvin Klein. But I definitely don't think like when people are saying older, I think if you wear a silhouette like this to the office, it looks extremely off key and like dated. I don't think you can wear something that looks like this to the office. But how many people even work in an office? So people can just dress like this day to day. But I don't know, in an office, it seems a bit, in 2025, I don't know. It seemed a bit odd dressing like that. But anyway, let's have a look at some of the looks via Vogue Runway. And then let's see if there's stuff that we notice close up. Let's see, guys. Fall winter 25 ready to wear. Yeah, but at that time it was the norm. Yeah, exactly, which is why it could work, even as office wear then. Because even when you watch like films in like the 80s and the 90s, people used to go to work like that. But I don't know. Nowadays, it is kind of outdated, to be honest, which is why this collection confuses me once again, because that silhouette kind of looks dated, but then she referenced that, but then referenced modern silhouettes at the same time. But then her, in interviews, she's talking about how she's trying to modernize tailoring. You don't modernize tailoring by mixing old tailoring that you're trying to go away from with new tailoring. Like, you have to find a silhouette that you're going to work with and that works for your time. Let's see. Okay, I mean, this collar is a very Calvin Klein thing on dresses and stuff. That Calvin Klein's been doing that for a while. Here we have the square-toed shoes. Let me know how you guys feel about those, about the footwear. This, I just don't know why anyone will want to buy something that has that kind of silhouette. I don't know what man is going to wear that, if I'm going to be very honest with you. I don't know anyone that's going to wear that. Literally no one. I don't know who the customer is for something like this. Literally doesn't exist. Let's move on. Okay, you have the coats with the smaller lapels and the clutch. Also the square toe footwear once again. When I saw this, I kind of like the fabric of this. It looks interesting. I don't know if it's kind of like a nylon or kind of like a silk sort of thing, but it has an interesting sheen to it. And these shoes I did like with the increased back for, I like it. I like the shape of this footwear. These heels look nice. I did like them. They are a bit clunky. I think that the shape needs to be refined ever so slightly to make it slightly a bit less clunky. But I do like the idea. I see the vision. I see the vision. Okay, the coat. The pinstripe coat. Okay, that's cool. I mean, once again, this 24/7 wardrobe, this is something that I'm thinking about as I'm looking through the collection, because it's very much like, would people wear this? Would people wear this? Like this silhouette of coat, I have to ask myself, would people wear this? I don't really see people wearing stuff that looks like this, to be honest. This, yes. This is more, so this is when I say like, she's referencing old Calvin Klein, because this silhouette is the winner here. Of all the silhouettes she was using, I think this is the winner. The reason why this is the winner from a silhouette standpoint is it's not as skinny as old Calvin Klein, but you can see that that's what the reference is. And I mean, she said it herself that she's really looking back to Calvin Klein before any other designer and kind of getting rid of all the work that has happened in between and then going back to the essence of what Calvin Klein is. So all she needed to do was take that silhouette, the sexiness of it, and just make it slightly wider to modernize it, because when you make it slightly wider, it doesn't look as dated as some of the Calvin Klein stuff we were looking at. And she would have been onto a winner. But then doing the 5 silhouettes in one collection and all that sort of stuff is where she really lost me in this collection. Seriously lost me. Here you have the sort of like a cape and a sleeve with the asymmetry. I just don't see... Another thing about Calvin Klein that I'm not seeing in this collection is Calvin Klein has to be somewhat timeless. These kind of pieces are not timeless at all, to be honest. I don't see the timelessness. And when you're talking about, cohesive wardrobe, 24/7 wardrobe, and those are kind of like your themes, I don't see it. This silhouette, once again, is what I'm talking about, where I'm like, this right here is the winning silhouette to me for her Calvin Klein. All the other stuff, she needs to lose it, to be honest. Because all this, like you're saying in interviews, when it's sexiness, when we talk about sexiness, it's about an attitude. I mean, let me go back, show you guys something. I don't think anyone's gonna feel sexy, regardless of what your attitude is like, in a piece that looks like this. If I'm gonna be very honest with you, I understand, yeah, sexiness can be how you carry yourself and stuff like that, but not wearing stuff like that. No way. No way. No way. No way. Someone is saying it's the row. I mean, she did design a lot of the collections at the row, so that obviously informs the way that she designs. But I just think that she needs to hone in on an actual Calvin Klein aesthetic. This again, we're just gonna skip past it because this whole like clutching the jacket, so many designers have done it over the years. There's literally nothing there to me. Even though like I've already spoken about kind of what her reasoning for it was, to me there's nothing really there. Also, Calvin Klein, very famous for its denim. She's added sort of like these wider silhouette. These almost look like they flare out at the bottom. This could be interesting. I need to see it from different angles and I need to see different people styling it, but people could take to that. I'm trying to see, is this a shirt worn under sort of like a thin hoodie? I just don't like, who wants to wear a hoodie that's like that thin? Like a structureless hoodie that thin. Like no one wears stuff like that. If I'm gonna be so honest with you, like no guy wants to wear stuff like that. I'm not saying that I speak for all men, but I kind of, there's no guy I know that's gonna wear a really skinny hoodie like that. Okay, we've got the trench coat. This is more where the timelessness is coming in. I like that. Let me have a look at the square toe footwear once again. See. Okay, they're even making like the dress shoes. These shoes look like they're too big for the model though. You can see the space there. Probably some issues with the samples. Okay, it's got some more really large coats. I like the silhouette of that coat, to be fair. That's nice. Okay, a bomber jacket with the styling is off key though. I see the vision with this look, but the styling, great. It could have been way better. It could have actually sold the bomber jacket. Once again, she's working with this very specific, like really long, wide silhouette of coat. I'm not too mad at it. I did like a lot of the footwear across the collection. I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was really, really nice. These elongated sleeve sort of kind of, is that a print? Yeah, it looks more like a print. I mean, this is the kind of silhouette of shirt I would love to wear because I have really long arms. So the elongated sleeves would be just right on my body, to be honest. Alex is saying the hoodie looked interesting. I don't think so. Because, wait, let me go back to it. 1 second. Let's go back. Let's go back. Oh, did I go past it? I might have gone past it. Yeah, I went past it. 1 second. Wasn't focusing. Okay, so let's have a look. So I don't find it interesting because first of all, you can see this V cut here. There's kind of like a V-neck hoodie. This, can you see here, right? The fabric is already rolling. Like you can see it's not rolling on this side, but on the right-hand side, on the model's left-hand side, you can see the fabric is rolling. I can assure you, these kind of thin fabrics, when you wash it, this V neckline here is going to get so bad so quickly. Trust me. I think it's gonna have so many issues. And considering that it's going to be a really expensive piece because it's Calvin Klein collections, to spend on something that's going to go, bad that quickly. Like, no. No. And then someone saying the shirt button showing up underneath must look so awkward in real life. Like, nah. I don't think there's anything there. I don't think it's interesting at all, to be honest. I just think it's a bad idea. Okay, here we have some more of the layering. This sort of sweater on a shirt and everyone wearing a shirt and then, coats on the shirt. It's just very, Okay, this silhouette looks very Bottega-esque. This sort of like wider trousers with the wider tailoring, big lapels. That's very Bottega. This silhouette, I like it, but it's very different to the silhouette that I said was a winner for her Calvin Klein, but I'm not too mad at this silhouette, to be honest. It is very Jill Sander, but I'm not mad at it. Yeah, these necklines, when it's zipped up, it needs to look a lot more chic than that. When past designers at Calvin Klein do high necklines or even with jackets, anything really, it has to be more chic than this. Observing the Matrix says, I worked for Calvin Klein during the Raf relaunch, and I think this will do much better. I watched Prada after this, and this was much more desirable if you're not just looking at the label. Yeah. So I think that, because you can have two perspectives on this collection. There's a perspective of, oh yeah, it's super commercial. There's stuff that people can buy, like the plain jackets and the plain trench coats and stuff like that. Yes, but I'm more speaking from a standpoint of Veronica Leoni as a designer and having a strong vision for Calvin Klein, which I am not seeing at all. So in terms of, can I look through this collection and be like, oh, that's a nice coat. Loads of people can wear that. It's easy to wear. Yes. But I just don't see a very cohesive vision across the collection, to be honest. I just don't think it exists in this runway show. And so there are individual pieces that you can just pull out. But as a designer, I'm more critiquing her as a designer at Calvin Klein and like her vision that she's going to push forward, because these things have a trickle down effect. Yes, people might see, things on an individual level and be like, that's interesting. But if Calvin Klein is not selling the dream overall, people just won't think about it. Like, people will just buy the Prada version instead of the Calvin Klein version, especially if what you're doing can be found in many other places. I love this footwear, by the way. Big fan. But yeah, people will just go with something else. Like, there's nothing too distinctive about what she's doing. Let's see. Okay, got some more indigo stuff. Denim, Ode to the House. This once again is like when I'm saying she's referencing like old Calvin Klein. This kind of silhouette or slightly wider, absolute winner. I'm telling you. Absolute winner. Absolute winner. Because even the trousers, you can see, like, the trousers are slim, but they're definitely wider than old Calvin Klein. Like, definitely. I think that silhouette is the winner, personally. Here was the one I was saying was confusing me, because it's like old Calvin Klein on top, really wide at the bottom. It just looks a bit odd, layering wise. Okay, we've even got the slippers. Some more tailoring looks. Let me see, because there are pieces I like. This piece, I saw the vision, like with the sequins all over and stuff. But I think the silhouette let the technique down. It's not very shapely, but I like the technique that they use, though. I like the technique. Okay, clutching the jacket together once again. Like I said, I'm not really going to dwell on that because we've seen that a trillion times, to be very honest with you. Where are the pieces that I actually really loved from this collection? One second. Maybe I missed them out. I must have not seen them. 1 second. I might have missed it. Let me keep skipping, see if I find it. This is the liar stuff that I was talking about with the clutch. This, I don't see the 24/7 wardrobe with that at all. Where are the pieces that I really loved? Yeah, these kind of things. So this kind of stuff here, where It's kind of like a wraparound lapel, right? It's really cool. Where you kind of have the lapel that extends all the way to, I'm guessing, where it's fastened, probably to the side or behind. You can't really see. Let's see if we get a different angle from the side. Okay, let's see. Can we see? Okay, yeah, so it's around here on the side. That is really cool. I like that technique. I like those sort of little details where you can really play. Here you have another version of it in a different fabric, a thicker fabric. I like this. So I was a big fan of these looks. I really, really like these. These are some of my favorite looks from the collection, to be honest. And obviously I like the footwear too. There was also a reference to the CK1 bottle, which I thought was very interesting. I kind of wanted to talk about it. I even think on some of the accessories too, like if you zoom in, the necklaces are referencing like the CK1 perfume bottle shape, which is, I mean, it's an interesting reference. CK1 is one of Calvin Klein's most successful fragrances, alongside, you know, fragrances like Calvin Klein Eternity and stuff like that, right? So that's like I'm not too mad at it. Here again, yeah, you can see that there were different kinds of bags that reference the CK1 bottle shape. And it made me think, what's the viability of buying a bag like that? Like, is it just for you to put your CK1? Is it kind of like, you know, you walk around and you have CK1 to hand, so you're always going to smell nice because you can always spritz yourself with CK1. When all else fails, spritz yourself with CK1. Is that what the point of it is? Because aside from that, what else can you really put in a bag that's shaped like a like a perfume bottle? And like, if they open by, because I'm not sure if they screw open like, you know, a perfume bottle would. If they do that, it's even worse because you can't even put your CK1. If it was kind of like, if it had a clasp where you just opened it sideways, then you could do that. But if it genuinely has a screw like the perfume bottles, then GG. What are you going to put there? Like, what exactly are you going to... You can't even put your keys in there because the keys won't fit through the opening. Really, really strange. Those are the kind of things that will never go into production, because I just don't see how that would work. Some of the bags, I'm still deciding about the bags. Once again, these shoes, I do like them. The like boxy shape of the footwear, I'm a big fan of those. I know some of you didn't like them, but I like those. I think they're quite cool. I want to see the other CK bags, if they had CK1 bags, if one opens a much better way, or if they're all kind of like that. 1 second, that's a nice practical bag. Okay, here we have another CK1, but it's basically the same thing. Okay, no, this looks okay. This looks like you open it sideways. Okay, so maybe not all of them are like that. So this one definitely looks like you open it and then you just put your perfume bottle and then you close it back. Okay, so there's hope. At least you can carry around your CK1 bottle of perfume. It's Calvin. If it doesn't work, it will just not be produced. Lord, trust me, corporate there is looking to make dollars, not surging. Yeah, I know that. I just mentioned it earlier that these are the kind of things that don't go into production. And Ben says, I like the collection, definitely picking up some trousers and one sports coat. Which ones, if you don't mind me asking? Let's keep going backwards. Because once again, this goes back to the point, I think it was Observing the Matrix made, where it's like, you know, it's going to sell better because it's more desirable than Raf. I think, first of all, Raf's Calvin Klein was really experimental to the point where a lot of it was hard to wear for most people, even though it was kind of still commercial. Whereas this is just pure, plain commercial. So, like stuff like this, like, you know, like the plain shirts and stuff. But my issue, and this is once again my issue with the Calvin Klein, when we talk about designer's point of view and having a vision, this collar, this collar of shirts, right, is literally the bog standard, industry standard in fashion, generic shape of a collar. What I liked about Raf Simons Calvin Klein is that even in the little things, even in the little details, he would change them. So the collars during Raf Simons Calvin Klein were slightly thicker, slightly pointier, right? So even just make your silhouette slightly different, because this kind of shirt, no joke, you can find anywhere in any country. This silhouette, shape wise, with this collar, with these kind of buttons. The buttons aren't even that interesting. These are literally the bog standard run of the mill buttons that you find everywhere. So that's my issue. It's like, okay, cool, it's commercial in the sense that, I mean, there are many brands that are commercial that people can buy stuff. But if we're talking about, a designer with a very strong vision, that's what I'm not getting from this collection. Someone is asking me, can I show an example? Okay. Let me Google men's shirt, literally. Men's shirt on Google. First page, guys. First page. First page. Look at the shape of the collar. Look at the color and the type of buttons used. First page. I don't make this stuff up. um, so that's what I mean. If anything, I might just pick up the skirt suit silhouette you mentioned because it reminds me so much of the skirt suits I owned from vintage Calvin Klein collection. Yeah, that was the stuff that I really enjoyed about the collection. That was what I think, is the winner. That's really, really what I think is the winner, to be very honest with you. Oh, Raf Simons collar. Okay, sorry. I was like, I thought you meant like the normal collar. It's like you can find that anywhere, literally. I'll show you. I'll show you with the Raf Simons. Give me 1 second. Let me just put it up on the screen. So I'll show you. Okay, so should we look at like his debut show? No, that's the menswear one. Where they broke it down into menswear looks. Okay, so let's see. CK shirts. So if you look at the collar, can you see how at the bottom of the collar here, do you notice how it's pointier? Like it comes down lower here. Can you see that this part is bigger? So that's what made Raf Simons Calvin Klein distinctive, because even when he does things as simple as shirts, he still tries to make it different to where it's not just a bog standard pattern that you can find everywhere in the world. And it's like you look at it and you're like, oh, that's a Raf Simons Calvin Klein shirt. Like even if he did it plain, and he did do plain versions. I'm not sure if I can't exactly remember every single look, but I remember he did do like a white shirt, like a white version, and it was still so distinctive because of the shape of it. And obviously they had those like contrasting pockets and stuff. Let me see, was it this collection that he had the white shirt? Maybe, maybe not. Yeah, maybe it wasn't that collection, but anyway, that's kind of what I'm talking about when it comes to the silhouette of the shirt. It's her first collection, so hopefully the visions over time. Yeah, I'm very sure. Like I said, when I looked at her work from the past, I like it. I think it's really, really good. So I know that she's a good designer. I just think she needs to work on her vision for Calvin Klein specifically. That's what I really think. And then also some stuff I want to see. Calvin Klein historically has been known for having, very memorable ads. And they have kind of channeled that in recent times. I mean, when you think of recent ad campaigns, you think of like Jeremy Allen White. So that's something that you can reference. You think of some other campaigns they've done, some other stuff they've done. But I'm hoping that during her tenure, we really start to see interesting marketing and really interesting ad campaigns. Because that's something when I think of, Calvin Klein in the 90s and stuff, that's part of the fun nature of the brand. It was the way they used to market it, to be very honest. And then she worked at Moncler. So I want to see interesting outerwear too. Like, how can she recontextualize puffer jackets in the world of Calvin Klein and have like a puffer jacket that looks ultra chic that you can wear over your Calvin Klein tailoring. That would be cool to see. And then also something that's at a more affordable price point than Moncler, because some Moncler jackets are insane by price. That would be like, those are things that she would do that I think should be onto a winner. Like, I would buy that stuff if she made it. Even you could see the under collar is a different fabric. It's all about the details, and especially should be when you do minimalism. Yeah, I'm with you, Joe. 100% with you. Which is why that's my issue. Like, if you're going to do minimalism, there still needs to be things that are interesting. You can't just use like bog standard patterns, in my opinion. So there still has to be like a point of difference. Otherwise, it looks like every other brand, which is what I think is the case, especially with the shirts here. Because even if you're doing the whole, minimal thing, I just think the shirts need to have like a more interesting shape to it. This is probably the one that has the more interesting shape. Like the neckline looks kind of big. Let's see. So yeah, I think all in all, there's just a lot more that needs to be done, I think, from a vision perspective. But I think it's just a debut collection. I don't think we should jump the gun. I think Veronica Leoni has shown that she's a good designer, and I definitely believe that. I just think that the vision isn't there when it comes to this Calvin Klein collection, to be very honest with you. Did she not have enough time to come up with a strong point of view for her Calvin Klein debut? This is a huge gig. Sorry, I don't buy it. Any student could give a stronger vision. I'm not sure about the student thing, but she definitely had a lot of time. That's for sure. If they were going to pick a minimal brand to try and emulate, instead of going for the row, I would think it would be more appropriate to look towards something like La Mer. Maybe. There's a lack of intention with the details. They're not asking why in regards to lengths and proportions of silhouettes. Let's just take this silhouette and make it wider. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm definitely with you. I think the whole clean slate thing was a misstep, to be honest, because it led to a confused collection. I don't think it was a misstep. I think it was a misstep because of the way she went about it. I think if she did a clean slate, and she had a consistent silhouette all the way through or something like that, I think it would be fine. It's just like, look at this silhouette, which I said is a winner. This is kind of like a modernized version of old Calvin Klein tailoring, right? What you're looking at on the screen. Then contrast that with like this ultra, almost like J.W. Anderson wide silhouette. And then you have like silhouettes that are kind of in the middle somewhere. Like some of the silhouettes are kind of in the middle, like here. That is like really weird. Was that in the Matrix says, I think this was a good starting point, not too loud or too quiet. It makes you want to see more and doesn't turn you off from looking closer. I'm not sure I agree with that. I don't know if I agree with like good starting point, but I'm definitely not jumping the gun and really having an issue with this being the debut collection, because I think that we need to allow designers to develop their vision over the course of a few seasons. And I am really annoyed with how the fashion system is right now, where everything is like, if a designer doesn't sell in like 2 seasons, then get rid of them, when their stuff has barely had any chance to sell, to really know if people would catch on to it. So I'm a fan of designers having a lot of time at brands. And then also, I don't like using the past against designers. So in the case of Veronica Leoni, I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, she should leave because she doesn't have a strong vision from Calvin Klein. Because every Calvin Klein designer I would compare her to, whether that's, Narcisco Rodriguez, Francesco Costa, they've had time to develop a vision. So that would be me comparing one collection to a designer. I mean, in the sense of Costa was at Calvin Klein for a long ass time. So it's not even fair to compare someone that was at a brand for so many years and then someone who has one collection. It's just not even fair. So that's why I don't jump the gun with things like that. But I do think if I was to say, like, am I impressed with this collection? No. Do I think it was a super, super strong debut? No. But I'm looking forward to what she does, to be honest. I just think I like the classics though. I like, going for the coats, the trench coats, the capes, the suits, the blouses, all those kind of things, square-toed footwear. But there's a lot more that needs to be done, personally, from my personal perspective. What did Luke say? The first impression is the only one that matters. She doesn't get it and thus should be on the way out. No, I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you. And I don't think the first impression is the only one that matters. There are so many designers. That's just not true. There's so many designers that their first impressions were really bad and then they went on to be like some of the greatest designers that we've heard of. I mean, look at the way that people took to Lee McQueen's earlier collections. Like, people hated his clothes. People thought he was sexist. They had all sorts of things to say about Lee McQueen. So if we're saying, the first impression is all that matters, I don't really agree with that. There are many designers across history that you can look through and see that, their first impressions, like how people viewed them at first, was really bad. Even if you think of the likes of Yohji Yamamoto and Rei Kawakubo, same thing. When they had their first collections in Paris, people were like, this is terrible. What is this? Like, like black unfinished hems. They don't know how to design. Their tailoring isn't even finished. Like, all this sort of stuff. So I just don't agree with that. I just don't agree with that at all. I can keep going. There's so many legendary designers now that the first impression on their clothing was really bad and people didn't like it. So I'm not sure I can agree with that, to be honest. I think the point of view of critique and fashion is getting tired. Personally, most clients don't know what each runway's point of view is. They want the clothes and then the rest will follow. So observing the Matrix, to be honest, I don't think it's tired, and I'll tell you why it's not tired. Because one, I have a niche audience. My YouTube channel is not the audience on my YouTube channel is not everyone. The audience on my YouTube channel is not mass. If I wanted the audience on my YouTube channel to be everyone, I'd start making hauls about Uniqlo and I'll start reviewing Zara's latest collection, to be honest. Like, I'm not... The whole point of this tiny corner of fashion is for us to over-intellectualize fashion, in a sense. Also, designers that don't have a vision get axed because they don't sell. Just look at Sabato at Gucci, for example. So I think it's very relevant. This whole, yeah, but it's going to sell. Like, this is the same conversation people are having around Sabato's Gucci, where they're like, yeah, but all this stuff is wearable. Alessandro Michele's stuff wasn't wearable. It's going to sell. And then it didn't. So, and that's not necessarily Sabato's, all of his fault. I think it's obviously corporate, as I've mentioned in past videos and streams. But I think this idea that, it's minimal, it's easy to wear, it's going to sell, is just not true. Because if your clothing looks like so many other brands, there's no point of difference. And the only point of difference is you can make it cheaper. If it's not cheaper, no one's buying that shit. I can assure you. So I think it's very, very important, to be honest. Also, thank you very much, Benz, for the super chat. Let's look. Your favorite pieces are, look, 27 and 59. Let's have a look. Let's see, 27. Okay, so the coat. That's cool. Okay, let's see, 59. Speed past these. Okay, this is cool. I mean, this is more akin to like the old, like the middle ground silhouette I'm talking about. Like modernizing Calvin Klein. I like this silhouette. This is really cool. I like the shape of this. I think we just live in a cult of personality age, and Gucci's designer has no personality and nobody can latch onto. We need to start liking things for what they are, not who made it, in my opinion. I don't agree, because once again, there are brands that are successful and it's not really about who made it or people latching onto things for what they are. Case in point, La Mer. People buy La Mer because they like the shape of the clothing and the silhouette, not necessarily because people are obsessed with the life and time of, Christophe Lemaire and stuff like that. I don't know if I can agree with that, to be fair. I just think as a designer, you have to have a very distinctive point of view. And I don't think Sabato de Sarno had that. And I think in this collection, once again, Veronica Leoni is not showing a very strong point of view with a lot of the clothing. So I don't think I agree with that, to be fair. Like, not every designer has to be this larger than life. The reason why designers sell is not just because people are obsessed with them as designers and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't think we live in a cult of personality age. I don't know if I agree with that, to be honest. I don't think so. I mean, my favorite brand is Mista, and there's no cult of personality there. In fact, like Mista doesn't design there. The designer that's there now basically does no interviews. He has basically no public profile. The reason I still buy Mista today is solely because of the silhouettes, and that's it. And the type of things that I buy from Mista are things that I cannot buy from anywhere else. So this cult of personality thing, I don't know if I agree with that. Don't you think that Sabato was actually way ahead of his time? No, I don't. I don't at all. The heels in the collection were interesting, but it's how you style them that's important. I think she needs to work on styling. I mean, like I said earlier, I think the footwear across the collection, I was a big fan of. I did see online that a lot of people, didn't like the footwear, but I was a fan. I did enjoy the footwear in the collection, to be honest. In 30 years' time, we'll look back at Sabato as a genius, really. Okay. 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 But yeah, anyway, like I said, it's a cool debut collection. I definitely want to see what she does from a branding and marketing perspective, whether that's through the fun ad campaigns. I want to see how this has a trickle-down effect on other collections. I want to see if it affects the way that she designs the outerwear. I also want to see if she uses her Moncler background to kind of make really chic puffer jackets or just more interesting outerwear to go with these sort of Calvin Klein silhouettes and stuff. And I also want to see her continue to, work on that idea of modernizing what sexiness means. Because I think that's an interesting point, and I like to see how she continues to develop that point. But yeah, thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. I shall see you in the next live stream. Thank you very much for watching.